Good afternoon, and welcome to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio with your host, Pamela Capallet, a certified financial planner here to help take the bite out of your budget. Brunchandbudget.com. I'm your sound provider, Dialect, and here's your host, Pamela Capallet.
Thank you, Dialect. Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope you're having an awesome weekend. It's finally spring, I hope I can safely say.
Kind of still a little chilly for me.
Oh my gosh, okay. So Dialect can't wait for summer.
I'm saying, right?
Totally. But we have a very special guest today in the studio. Author Mary Pilon. She just wrote a book called The Monopolists. Thank you so much for being here, Mary. Ooh, so are we. So, basically, The Monopolists is, I'm going to let you take it away in a second, but it's about the history of Monopoly, which you think is pretty straightforward. So straightforward that they write it in every single one of the board games. Mr. Monopoly tells you the history of Monopoly. That's how real it is, right? It turns out that is not the case, and Mary wrote a whole book about it. So what is the story that most people know, and what's the story that you actually ended up uncovering?
Sure. So the story that I heard and that most people hear is that it was invented by a man, Charles Darrow, at the height of the Great Depression.
Yeah, Charles Darrow. I know that story.
Yeah, it's famous.
Yeah, it's
and
a big
for
thing.
years, Parker Brothers tucked this into the game boxes, as you had mentioned, that during the Great Depression, he's, having a hard time. He's unemployed. He has to feed his family. He goes into his basement and he gins up this game, puts Atlantic City properties on it to remind his family of better times and vacations there, and then sells it to Parker Brothers, and then he and the company are saved from the brink of destruction. It's, Horatio Alger, Cinderella, Rags to Riches, pick whatever literary allusion
American
you want.
Dream.
But the problem is that's not true exactly. There was a woman who actually invented the game, Lizzie McGee, who created her Landlord's game and received a patent for it in 1904, which is long before the Great Depression.
So Monopoly was the landlord's game?
Right. So her Landlord's game, if you read the rules, it's all about teaching people the evils of monopolies. So almost right after she starts putting this game out there, people are playing it as a folk game and start calling it the Monopoly game. And she makes two rule sets, a monopolist one and an anti-monopolist one.
Whoa.
And so it's kind of ironic because she makes it as a teaching tool to show the evils of capitalism and was very concerned with monopolies, and it ends up very quickly kind of being the opposite.
Right. Wow. So Monopoly actually started off as an anti-monopoly game that was invented by a woman.
A feminist, no less.
Feminist.
An outspoken feminist.
In the early 1900s.
Right.
And then was stolen by some dude and some company, and they made it a game about being good at monopolizing things.
Yeah, the history's very complicated before Parker Brothers, like all good stories tend to be. And so when the game is spread, because of Lizzie and her social circle, it's not surprising that it becomes very popular among a who's who of left-wing intellectuals. So
okay.
Scott
so
Nearing,
it was popular.
Yeah, so it was popular, and people, when they played it then, made it their own. They had their own boards. They made them out of wood or oilcloth or whatever it may be.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so then they...
Real DIY thing.
Totally, absolutely, totally punk, and they
Yeah, punk board games, y'all.
and by the time Darrow's playing the game and he learns it from a friend, the friends obviously know they didn't invent it because they learned it, but they also, Lizzie McGee kind of gets lost in that early history because this is 30 years after her game, and we're several degrees removed from that original group of players.
Right.
And so the Darrow story, one of the questions I get is why did that spread for so long? And I think and the Quakers and the folks who played the game in the 30s said, well, we didn't know. We tried to correct the record, but we knew we didn't invent it either. So usually if you're going to correct somebody, it's you stole my idea. It's not you stole some idea that maybe somebody else thought of. They knew it existed before. So it gets muddled pretty early on.
Gotcha. How did you even find this out? Where did this even come from, and what made you want to look into it more?
This came about totally by accident. In 2009, I was writing about the economy at the Wall Street Journal, which was really sad. It was a really depressing story.
Yes, it was.
And I have always loved games and puzzles, and I thought, I'll put a throwaway line in about Monopoly being invented during the Great Depression, because here we are in what we now call the Great Recession. And I was looking for the true story, and it just wasn't adding up. It didn't make any sense, and I was very frustrated. And I heard about this man, Ralph Ansbach, who had been involved in litigation against Parker Brothers. And I contacted him on a whim, and I was like, hey, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm a reporter at the Journal trying to find out the truth about Monopoly. And he got back to me right away and was like, I'll tell you all about it. And just started telling me this whole story, which, 5 years later ended up being a book and was totally insane.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
So you've been working on this book since 2009.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether that's impressive or sad or some combination of the two, but yes, more or less. I mean, I've had other jobs and things, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, how long is
It's
it
been a long
taking,
road.
what's his name, to get out the Game of Thrones books? I think
Yeah.
5 years is not bad.
Well,
Yes.
my attitude, I'm such a fan of, so Robert Caro is another author who takes forever to do his books. And at first, because I'm just, totally selfish as a reader, I'm like, gosh, get on it. And now I just totally see it the other way. I'm like, lay off. Let people take as
breathe.
much time as they need to get whatever they need to get done,
Right.
Well,
Well,
you
this
know-
must have been... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that tip, you notice why everybody's second project creatively is usually kind of garbage because they always rush it out within a year.
Because people are like, where's
They
the next
say
one?
it takes you,
Right.
20-some years to create your first project, and then if you try to do your next one in a year,
Right,
it's going to
right.
be shallow.
Absolutely. And I can't believe how many people have asked me, what's your second book? And it's always from a very kind place. It's always because they liked The Monopolists.
first one, yeah.
But I always feel like the example I gave is I'm a wounded soldier in a battlefield, and you're asking me to pick up arms right away. I'm
Oh my God.
I feel very much in the middle of this one. And I think that a book, and I'm sure that, bigger projects like, say, an album or making a film, you have to be so obsessed with the idea. That's
Yes.
something that you wake up with Saturday at 7 a.m. It's something you have nightmares about. It's something that you have to just be totally driven towards and not care if you make any money or, how that's going to work out because you don't know. And I think that with your second project, especially if your first one, you're lucky enough to have your first one be well received, there's all sorts of expectations from outside that are thrown on you
Oh,
that,
yeah.
mentally you need to be able to, deal with going in. So I'm in no rush is the short answer.
In 5 years, maybe ask again.
Yeah, God, who knows?
Well, why? I just want to find out too. Why was it so important for you to tell this story? Because it was in the 1900s. The game is the game. It feels like that you're revealing a truth, but you spent 5 years revealing it.
Right, and I at first didn't know the answer to that, and I still don't know 100% if I do. And I feel like it became clear in researching this that, as far as I know, no other journalist had done a deep dive on this. And so part of me thought it was just fascinating. It was a fun way to spend time kind of going through these records and learning about it, and I'm just a geek, so that part was nice. But then you reach a certain point, not all parts of the creative process are beautiful and frilly, and I don't sit at a desk with rose petals, in my typewriter just churning the stuff out.
Ooh, who
there's
does?
some moments of agony. All of us have them. But it became clear with Lizzie McGee in particular that nobody was going to tell this woman's story at a certain, other people kind of come and gone. And if you were really into game history because of Ralph's lawsuit, you knew who she was. But I think that the world is full of people like her that, chip away at things and for whatever reason just get totally written out of history.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
it's been fascinating since the book has come out. I've heard from a lot of, either historians or academics, people that say whether it was because you were a female or a minority or you lived in this part of the country or you were lower class, whatever it may be, there's all these other examples of people that just are excluded from the narrative. And I felt like, and this came up in another interview, but I feel like if we can't get Monopoly right, what hope is there for other things? I mean, I spend most of my time doing day-to-day journalism, which is very rapid, and it's kind of history unfolding day to day. And now I feel like, when we are writing about Syria, there are things we need. Accuracy still matters to me tremendously, and this was something that seemed so silly where it wasn't accurate, and that bothered me, to be honest.
Yeah, no, totally. And also just thinking about kind of a woman getting shut out of history in a way and creating something and having that creation turn into the exact opposite of what she wanted it to be.
Right. And also, one of the things that happened with Lizzie, I approached the first part of the book writing her mini biography. And I had this moment after I'd sold the book where I was like, oh crap, I have to research somebody who's famous for being obscure. As a reporter, that's just a nightmare, right?
Totally.
And I realized oh no, I actually have to really, really do it. And I was totally overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. And I pieced together, after I kind of pieced together her timeline and found census records and some articles that have been written about her, I went back and I totally rewrote the first part of the book because I felt like I had no context for her being an inventor at the time. And so I read up about women inventors and the history of them in this country because I didn't know anything about that. I had to read about women's, rights before suffrage. And by the way, after suffrage, they weren't that great either.
Right.
Because I felt like I was totally, a female game designer, which has been a huge group that has gravitated towards the book in recent weeks, which has been really
that makes
fascinating.
sense. They've been in the press
but
a
a
lot,
century ago, it's rare now because of Gamergate and stuff.
Right.
You're hearing about this more, but my God, a century ago, it was just hard for me to imagine.
Was she the only female inventor?
So when she, I can't remember if this stat made it into the book or not, but when she got her patent in 1904, fewer than 1% of patents were from women at the time. And the other thing that's crazy is what's amazing to me about Lizzie McGee's story, well, many things are, but the fact that it even survived, that she even got a patent, that she even renewed it. This is a woman who didn't go to college because it just wasn't really accessible to her from what we know. This is the fact that she actually did play the game and get through. It was a terrible pun. I apologize. But because now somebody emailed me. I haven't researched this, but the cotton gin, Eli Whitney, iconic invention, changes so much in this country,
industry, everything.
And there's somebody asked, well, his wife may have not been credited because. Some women didn't even sign, and it's so hard as a researcher because you're just dealing with rumors and rumors and rumors. And what I liked about this story also as a reporter is that there were tangible things. There were things like depositions, original boards. It's amazing to me any of this stuff survived.
Yeah. So there's
Especially
still the
with
landlord's game out there somewhere. People still have it.
Right. Yeah.
Whoa.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And also with board games, it's a lot like comic books, where for years people thought comic books were crap, and they used them to stuff their pipes and line their kitty litter boxes and things. And only relatively recently people realized that these are high art. These are this is an iconic part of storytelling. And I feel like board games are kind of in the same position where nobody takes them seriously. And the fact that any of these made it when people just thought they were, garbage after, they'd been used so many times is amazing, because I think they are cultural artifacts. I think there is a lot to be learned from looking at them.
A lot of process. I don't know if any of you have had a class where the fun class was the teacher came in and made a board game out of the lesson.
Oh, yeah. I had to
It's
do
an
that
effective
once.
way for learning because it's fun and it works.
Right.
Well, and you have to think through so many things when you're putting together a board game. And, it's interesting that Monopoly took off in the 30s, right?
Right.
During the Great Depression. So do you think it's also a marker of the time period?
Right. I talk about this a lot in the book, and you talk about games being used as a force for good, which I totally believe. I think there's a lot of psychology. I just think that those worlds haven't really been married yet as well as they could be. But I think that board games in general, and I don't think Monopoly is an exception, they're role-playing, and they give you a context to do stuff that you can't do in ordinary life, which is why kids love Monopoly, I think, so much, is that you get to kind of play parent. If your parent's Donald Trump, I guess, but you get to handle property and money, and somebody can be rich, and I know when I played with my brother, I actually stood a chance at clobbering him, and that was a big deal because he was so much bigger than I was. So I think that all games, there's a certain degree of escapism that's powerful.
Yeah, totally. And you level the playing field in a lot of ways, too, it seems like.
Right. Board games can be very democratic. But the other thing is, people steal and lie and cheat.
Even in board games.
It brings out a lot of bad
games like life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But in this safe setting where you kind of can figure out, how far do I actually want to go?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like the idea of you being able to beat your older sibling and feel like a grown-up.
Right. And it also just brings out really nutty things in people. I love playing games with friends because it's, it's competition. It's a lot like sports, but you don't have to be, have a perfect body or something to go do it. You can find out a lot about people by putting them together and playing a game like Monopoly or Risk or whatever it may be. And I always find that really fun.
I love it.
Yes, compete while being out of shape.
It's a nerd sport. It totally counts.
No, it's funny that it is a nerd sport, but it's related to the thing that we often deal with in money of the zero-sum idea.
Right, absolutely.
Monopoly straight up is.
Yeah, it's
and
literally
it's funny how
zero-sum.
as kids it all makes sense. You're like, I get all the money, so you have none of the money. And then we carry that mentality into adulthood. And
right. I can't remember where I was reading this, but recently it was in the context of actually workplaces and envy and colleagues, and this idea that the pie of success is a big one.
Right.
And we can all have slices. We can all, just because one person's successful doesn't mean you can't be. But It's amazing. I don't know where. I think that is that an American thing? Like,
well, there's
very-
evolutionary psychological stuff that goes on to
Yeah.
it, but it's also a thing that can be cultivated. We've dealt a lot with it.
Yeah, definitely. I imagine a part of it is a logic thing. Like, if I take from you, then you have less, right? Like,
Right,
and that
right.
makes sense when you're a kid. And I think that does carry into adulthood, where you're like, well, if she has it, that means I don't.
right.
You know, where there isn't that like circular way of like, well, if you have $1 and you pass that dollar on, then it might eventually come back to me, you know?
Right.
I think the dirty side of it is when it gets to be like the De Beers company, where we're inventing more and more scarcity to make people want to compete even more fiercely.
It's so funny you mentioned De Beers. There's an amazing article. You'd have to do some deep Googling to find it. But about the history of De Beers and the engagement ring and how basically.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
no.
yes.
It was
I tell
just,
this
like,
story
made-
every day.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating to
Yeah.
me. But that's what I mean is like I love taking like histories of things that you think you know. Like things don't just come out of nowhere.
Right.
Like looking at their history, I think is really like fascinating and interesting and.
No,
you
I
know.
actually knew about Lizzie McGee because
Yeah.
I'm this type of nerd too. I
Bless you.
I dug up the De Beers stuff and I saw the thing about Lizzie McGee. One thing that I thought was really fascinating that I think you kind of already addressed, I'm going to ask about, was that this is a book. I do a lot of
Right.
reading about these types of people. I love these types. This is my whole philosophy of real, recognize real. It doesn't matter, like you said, if you made any money, you didn't make any money.
Right,
the people
right.
who are going to viscerally connect throughout time they'll always get it. But I usually get this info in an article, and I'm usually pretty happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'll read 2 pages. When I originally read about
Right,
it,
right.
I was like, okay, oh, yep, another woman who invented something, got jerked over, and now they're doing the opposite. That's a shame. And then I moved on, and it's the same thing like you read about Rodin's
Right,
wife.
right.
Yeah, did
F.
everything,
Scott
yeah.
Fitzgerald was like drugging and stealing his wife's diary. And
Right,
it's all this kind of.
right,
You read an
right.
article, and you're like, okay, cool, those guys are
That kind of
jerks.
sucks, yeah.
And there is so much to this story, not just about the details of the story itself, but what it means for American society
Right,
and us as a
right.
people, that it's really entirely worth it to have that much. And just like you're saying about having a record, that she's famous for being obscure, but now there's a book, the hit book, right?
It's a bestseller,
no, best-selling book about
Yeah.
this. Like, if she had nothing else to her
Right,
name,
right.
she's got this kind of thing, and that's
Yes.
why it needed to be a book rather than an article that got a lot of clicks.
Absolutely, and when you start, because I originally wrote an article, and it was the first time I didn't feel done. Right? And usually, when you close an article,
Word.
especially a place like the Journal or the Times, like you're exhausted, and you end up
Right.
publishing a fraction of what you've actually learned about something. You become like a mini expert, or in some cases, a big expert on something. And I just had so many more questions, and I felt like and then you go and you propose your book, and the question publishers always ask, and my book proposal was like 50 pages or something. It was like the longest thing I'd written. It took me a year. It took forever. And one of the questions that they ask you, which is totally fair, is why isn't this just a long magazine article? And the deeper I got in the reporting, and you also kind of put your neck out there on your own because you're reporting and spending all this time, and in my case, money as well, when nobody's bought anything. It was
Right.
just me
Yeah.
staying on my aunt's couch in San Francisco going through Ralph's documents, like, what am I doing with my life right now? But you kind of have to just kind of march forward and think, like, there's something here. Like,
Yeah.
there's something. And the more I did that, the deeper the story got. And I hit walls, but different ones, where I became overwhelmed that the story, when I figured out that Lizzie McGee's father, James McGee, was around for the early days of the Republican Party. It was this influential newspaper editor, and his
Wow.
politics were so fascinating. I was like, God, the timeline of this story just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more ambitious the story becomes, the harder, that is to do in a
in like
type fashion. But
yeah.
I also felt very strongly that this book didn't need to be 600 pages. It shouldn't be. And it shouldn't be academic and wonky. It should be readable. It was important to me that.
Awesome.
And there's different kinds of writing for different kind of people, but I felt like, as a journalist, you're literally writing for a mass audience. That's the whole point. And, some people might say that's kind of like selling out, but I'm like, no, I want like my 14-year-old nephew to pick up the book. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday.
Woo. Shout out to
But I
Mary's
also
nephew.
want like my 87-year-old grandma to
Yeah.
read it. And one of the great rewards of the book so far has been hearing from not just a lot of people, but a lot of different people. So I
Totally.
feel like that's been a very positive result.
Well, and history should be something that's accessible. Like, you've written it in a way that anyone can read it. There's no reason for something like history to be academic.
Right,
and to
absolutely.
close people off from it.
Well, words in general. You know, let an underground rapper tell you that communicating is not the same thing as selling out.
Right.
When you're talking to a person for a purpose, you got to talk to them on a level that they can understand you. There is such a thing as doing weird art that must be understood in a non-textual level, and that's fine. You do that, in this way for that type of thing. But when you're talking to folks, you're talking to folks.
Right.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is that kind of story. I mean, it's about a board game.
Right.
Kids who love Monopoly and play Monopoly are going to want to pick this book up.
Right. And also, I mean, I put a lot of footnotes in there because I felt like if you really wanted to geek out, go for it. And I think
just like game people do.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this temptation with books, too. I think people think that they're the last word. And I've later on realized, like, no, it's the opposite. Like, I hope somebody writes a better Monopoly book in 50 years. Like, that'd be awesome. Yeah. Like, I hope that more stuff comes. Like, I don't know. Like, the idea that I would have written, like, the one and only thing. I mean, it goes back to the zero-sum idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Someone's already done this. It's like, no, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting, too, is now with the internet, the conversation can continue in so many different ways, which I think is really cool. We have to go to a song, give you some breathing room.
Fabulous.
We'll talk more Monopoly, more Lizzie McGee. I want to hear more about this landlord's game situation.
Yeah, the landlord's game is such a fascinating thing. I love the options of being monopolist or non-monopolist. And speaking of which, all of our musicians today are going to be monopolizing our time in some kind of way because all of their songs are called Monopoly. This first song is called, they're also very different songs about Monopoly, so you can tell us at the end which one you like the best. This first one is from Foul-Mouthed Jerk, from his album Streetlight Music, and it's called Monopoly. Brunch and Budget, Bonfire Radio.
And a 20-year witness in the land of any man, where every day's a little different, hourglasses pass as sand. But the more things change, I guess the more they stay the same. It's all a strain to maintain, steady accumulate pain until explosion. Misguided placements blame. Some go insane because they think that they trained for the game, but come to find out they don't even know the name of the game. Possibly Monopoly, because at times I feel like a thimble racing mad far, getting chased by a dog and a cowboy in a car. Damn, they're getting closer, so I cut through Marvin Gardens where them punk kids think they hardest. But come down the Mediterranean and Baltic, y'all get assaulted. Man, I've been jetting through this game since St. James and can't get a rest because there's a chance they're gonna lock me in community chest. Man, fuck this game, I ain't playing. At least not by their rules. I hopped the train to B&O and seen some kids with the tools. Said they was on their way to Park Place to stick them for the jewels. Asked me did I want to get down with them and joining the cash. Stacking yellow 500 bills, lamping on Illinois Ave. But how long could that last until it ends with a crash? Back on that ass. It's all in the mental. I know I got potential. Nah, fuck it, fellas. I'm getting off on Oriental so I can get this egg roll and ponder my bankroll. But inside the store, I seen a kid I knew folding up a G or two. He turned around like,
damn, how long's it been since I seen you?
Well, you know, since you fell into a cell.
You know what we need to do.
Yeah, go outside and spark a L. So we left the store, he lit the blunt, and as the cess hit the air, he said,
how you living, kid?
He said like people under the stairs. We laughed as he smoked and passed as he choked.
Oh, that kid, you living dead, bro?
Word is born, no joke.
You need to come with me, because we be getting cheddar like mad out on Connecticut Ave. These days, we living fatter than an elephant's ass.
Yeah, but you know my thing ain't clocking, because police be locking like young bucks be slapboxing.
Shit, I know. By now, I'm an old pro at getting locked down before I pass go.
Oh, I believe that. By the way, the service good, man. Where you get this weed at?
I don't know his name. I only know his face, but he got shit laced with them fat bags up on St. Charles Place.
Oh, word, you quit fucking with nasty-ass Chubby from them projects over on Kentucky?
Oh, yeah, some cat got shot. They blew up the whole fucking spot.
So we had a little more cess and a lot more talk. He said that we was destined to be neighbors one day lamping up on Boardwalk. I said, yeah, you ain't lying. And if not, we keep on trying till we dying. He stood, gave me a pound, and as he stepped, I felt like crying. Because right about then, I'm realizing that I don't know when or if I'll ever see this cat again. Or for that matter, any of my friends. Because these days, life has a trend of meeting my friends with premature ends. Now, due to that, my philosophy on governmental policies on poverty has got to be fuck this bullshit. Let's raise up and own property in this United States monopoly.
Welcome back to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio. That was a little bit of a spoken word style piece of Monopoly by the foul-mouthed jerk. We're here with best-selling author Mary Pilon, who's got a book, The Monopolists, that everybody's read, and if they haven't, then they're failures in life. So you better get out and read it.
Agreed. You better go buy your books now, guys. Right now.
Words of Brunch and Budget. Wow.
Download the Amazon app if you're on the train and just get it. Or wherever you buy your books. It doesn't have to be Amazon.
That's true. There really are, though, no excuses. Because now, especially because of like IndieBound and like all these other places, I'm like, you can use the internet to get a book from many retailers now. And like,
that's very true.
You could do it right now.
You could get just sent to your house.
You could. I mean, I'm sure on a bunch of places you could read like the like first page or so. You know, they got a little preview for you.
Yes.
Catch up.
Yeah, get on it. So the story is extremely interesting because I feel like that Monopoly is something that we, as Americans, kind of take for granted. Is the invention of it being this rags to riches story, this American dream story? We talk a lot about the American dream on this show and whether that is a reality for people or not. Why do you think that Darrow's story resonated with people?
That's a great question. I think that the Darrow story, this idea that he invented it during the Great Depression and it reversed his fortunes and Parker Brothers as well. I think it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really romantic. It's really charming. It's really appealing.
Sure is.
And to get a little, like, psychological about it, I think on some level we all want to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That we, too, on, any given day could create something and overnight become gazillionaires. And the problem is that, I don't know if it's a problem, but I think in reality, innovation and making things is clumsy. And it's trial and error. And it's collaborative. And it's messy and often, not that. And so I think that we project a lot of ourselves and our own ambitions and ideas of, the light bulb moment onto it. And sure, I'm sure sometimes that happens. But in practice, things are refined over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like that's what the landlord game was.
Exactly.
It got refined into this version that Charles Darrow eventually sold.
Exactly. And that's part of the
Brothers.
reason why the version he was playing, I think, was so much better is because groups like the Quakers had modified it in ways to make it simpler and easier to use with kids. And so the game, if you played the 1904 version, I mean, I think the game we ended up with in the early 30s, or one of the games, I suppose, is better. I think it's better because people tinkered and changed it and
collaboration, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So
they tested it,
I didn't go in to write like a theoretical book or anything, but I think that in the nature of like the fact gathering, you do kind of find these like interesting conclusions. I mean, even today the Darrow story is still sticking. I'm like, gosh, now
we know the truth.
Like I have 300 pages about this, and so that's. I just think it's really irresistible. It's a great. If there was an award for stories, that would win it.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, definitely. And I mean, I think you're totally right that part of the American dream is the fact that it can remain a dream, and you don't have to really face the reality of like, well, this is kind of just my station in life.
Right. And the American dream, I think has been a moving target. It's a changing thing, depending what generation you're talking about. But I think for a long time that overnight success, that you can be a down on your luck guy, especially during like a really dark chapter of American history.
Right, Great Depression,
stuff, right? I mean, that's really potent, especially at the time, even looking back on it now. I mean, because I, like so many people, heard all these Depression stories from my grandmother, and then, so I knew as a kid that was a bad time to somebody who I, was very connected with. So I think I think the fact that it's also woven into U.S. history makes a difference too.
Oh yeah. The Great Depression is like, it's like Hitler is every bad guy,
right?
Yeah,
because it happened recently into America.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So how did you play the anti-monopoly version of the landlord's game?
So what's funny about it is that, and to be honest, I don't own a set, so I've never actually really geeked out hard with the anti-monopolist rules. But you go around the board and you get like points. Like it's more about, and anti-monopoly in the 70s actually kind of mimics this. It's about breaking things apart. It's about, so
Oh.
anti-monopoly in the 70s, you get like indictment chips and like you're a lawyer trust busting, and so
That's my game.
It's Monopoly backwards. I mean, that's kind of the simplest way.
Whoa.
And Monopoly's a weird game because like we're so hardwired in how we play it.
Yeah.
That playing an opposite version of it, you really have to kind of like actively be thinking about it, or at least I have a hard time with it because we're such creatures of habit.
Yeah,
No,
totally.
but I'm thinking already about like the 1970s, because you're saying about it, the zeitgeist
Trust-busting.
having a lot to do with, the game, how
Right.
it is. And trust busting and people being into that being, the cultural thing. I'm just imagining the fervor of playing it that style then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and at the turn of the century, trust busting and monopolies, they were just talked about in a way that they aren't anymore. That was a big, talking point. The progressives were really concerned with this later on, and then the Carnegie, Rockefeller, like all these people were making a ton of money in a way, and they were very high profile that we hadn't really seen before. And it's sometimes you hear it talked about in different wrapping. Like I think like a lot of the conversation about income inequality, if you're into education, the achievement gap, I think it's coming up in different ways, but we've never really stopped talking about this stuff.
It's true, but remember, I'm the one who talks about the rapping.
That's your job.
If you want to play the songs, I guess.
Fair enough.
So, wow. So which version was more popular with people, the anti-monopoly version or the monopoly version?
As far as we know, the Monopolist rule set is the one that takes off pretty quickly, and which I find fascinating that all these people that were more or less
Progressive and
ish on the same political page as her were playing like the evil version of the game.
Well, it's like you said with the role playing, though, right?
right. Yeah. That's
How
a
many
good
video
point.
games
Yeah.
have people played where you're a hero who murders thousands upon thousands of people mindlessly,
Yeah, just pushing a button.
Well,
I
in
mean,
film, you look at like cathartic release, right? And this idea that we watch horror movies.
yeah.
Like we watch people, and we know
Oh my
it's
God.
fake, but because we know it's fake, it's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Do you think it's easier too? Like, you were saying that you kind of had to reframe how you thought about the game when it was the anti-monopoly version in your head. Do you think it's like a natural human thing, or do you think it's something we've learned that now we kind of have to unlearn?
You mean playing the game is hard because? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What a great question. I'm not sure. I think a lot of it's habit, but I think that a lot of it is the zero-sum piece that we were talking about, and that
Where it just like makes sense that you're taking
and
from
also
somebody.
there's something said for whatever's easiest, right? I mean,
Yeah.
often when given two options, we go to the easier one. And I
Right.
think the Monopolist rule set, for a bunch of reasons, is easier for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of indictment points versus just collecting money feels like you're kind of once removed from everything.
Right.
Yeah, maybe, and I don't know if it's even specifically easier, but it feels like it would be more emotionally satisfying in the moment.
Yeah.
The same way that,
Right.
you're talking about films and whatnot, about how the happy ending, even though it's a cliche type of happy ending, you need to feel that. I've seen plenty of great indie movies where I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying this, and then they have a complicated ending. I'm like, oh.
I don't know how to
Yeah,
feel.
yeah.
Couldn't you have just won and kissed in the sunset and that have been a...
Well, and happy endings, I think of, especially in film, as a very American thing.
Yes.
Very, very American. And I mean, I could tell you, like, oh, I like complicated endings, and sometimes I do, but often I have the same reaction where I'm like, this is crap,
Yeah. Why didn't everything wrap up? Isn't that what the 2 hours
why
was
don't
for?
you love each other? Come on, you
Right.
went through all that stuff.
I know.
Or the worst is when you don't know, and like, they kind of throw you off for a few days. You're like, I don't know what I think about this. Oh God, it got into my brain.
Yeah.
Art, amazing.
No,
I do feel like that board games kind of give you that, like, okay, I'm satisfied. You lost, I won. That's it. Period.
yeah, and I
The
guess you
end.
don't want to have it sitting in your head, especially
Yeah.
if that is your reality.
Right.
You don't want to have
Yeah.
that in your head for the few days. You want the satisfaction of feeling like you won.
Yeah.
But there are, some good values there too. I think like sometimes in life you have to acknowledge you lost.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
you
yeah.
got crushed.
Yeah.
Or like, so I think that there's, there are some things that are applicable, or like you won, like you killed, like you just, or
You
you
excelled
were
at this.
better at somebody than something. Like I think there is some truth to that.
Lots of violent words.
and being able to
Yes.
handle that.
Yeah.
Like,
not everyone gets a ribbon.
and that and the game. Well, and in board games, like it's just a game. Like it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. And I find myself, saying when something bad or good happens, being like, you have to kind of pull back and think like, oh, this is just something that happened to me this week or today.
Right.
Or, I think board games are this very interesting little picture thing that we could easily point to. But Getting existential. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. And when you get
Love it.
mad at the end, you can just throw the board across the room.
Exactly.
It's not like your video games where you're destroying
Yeah.
machinery. It's just some
Absolutely.
cardboard.
And sometimes thank God it's a game, right? I mean, whew.
Yeah, I can just put that away now.
Right.
Why do you think Monopoly became kind of an enduring game? I feel like there's probably so many games that got invented over the years, and like if you go down like a board game aisle,
Right.
it's just growing nowadays. But Monopoly is like translated into different countries and different languages.
Right,
like,
right.
why this game?
Yeah, do kids still even play Shoots and Ladders and
Candyland and
Yeah, totally. But Monopoly, I mean, first of all, it has a lot of things going for it. I mean, one is a hit in the board game industry is super rare, something that is played from generation to generation.
Oh, okay.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often. So I think it has that there are going to be people who are introduced to the game just because they're kind of force-fed. But I also think there's the role-playing piece we were talking about. There's, what's fascinating to me is, especially in the book tour, when people talk to me about the board game, they almost never talk about the game itself. They talk about their family or their friends, or
yeah.
it gives people like this context. It's almost about their memories or something. It's more like if you ask somebody about Christmas or Hanukkah or a holiday, you might get a tree story in there, or we were sitting at church. But really, you're going to hear about what they got for Christmas and, their parents reading stories. Like, you're going to get all this stuff that goes with, like, it's a ritual.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful. And Monopoly is very unusual in that it's a game that's very tied into that, I think, for a lot of people.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
Makes sense.
That does
Right?
make sense.
Fun sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I never learned how to play Monopoly properly.
Oh, I don't know who has.
Oh, I love that you outed yourself.
I
though.
did. I'm
mean,
like,
that's been a raw nerve
'cause
for
I'm like-
a lot of people.
Nobody plays it right.
It's not too late, Pam. It's
Okay, I'm like, oh my god,
gonna
I've
be
never
fine.
learned.
You put the extra money and the free parking and
You're a cash injector. I can feel it.
people.
I was always the banker.
Oh wow, Cass! Oh wow, I didn't even think about. Yeah, wow.
Injecting cash is what everybody does, and it makes the game go longer.
But that's like our governments. We've been bailing out
Yes,
people for
exactly.
years.
Just like
you just
life.
blew my mind there.
There's no Fed in the game of Monopoly, guys. Like, it's not
No
happening.
bailouts.
Although somebody emailed me that a lot of people make their own house rules that are very, like, knowing that it's
That
just
they're not
for
right,
fun.
yeah.
And somebody emailed me who he and his friends, when he play, securitize their mortgages.
Whoa.
Which I thought was really funny. And, like, they do swaps and, yeah.
Whoa.
So I like that, too. Like, I don't want to be like a
Yeah.
total stodge.
Well,
but,
it's like you're saying
yeah.
about how the game evolved. I think, things that go within the logic of it are always a good idea. That's a little far, but like,
Right, right.
but having in my family, we had loans and debt, which I thought was a simple way, which was an extension like that still played within the theme. And
Which
that was
also created more money.
more money and a way to extend the
again,
game.
more-
You made your own Fed. It's
Yeah.
Which made the game lasted like 3 days.
Right. Of course, it's always
Right.
a forever type of thing, but anything that helps keep it up to date and keep it
Right.
feeling like it's real.
Go ahead. I feel like play however you want. Just don't complain it's too long.
Word.
Like,
Fair.
You do whatever you want, but don't put that on the original rule set because that's not,
Right, because that's one of the things is about it's
Right,
too long, but that's
right.
because of how everybody plays.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how long is an average game supposed to last if you play it right?
When I play, 60, 90 minutes.
Whoa, really?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
really fast.
And there's a lot of other little like details. Like one of the rules that gets overlooked is if you pass go and you don't ask for it.
You don't
Yes.
get the $200.
Or if you don't collect rent when somebody lands on it. And what those rules do, which makes it go faster, is people are paying attention. Like they're engaged. They care about what people are doing on other turns other than their own. And so like little things like that speed it up because when
Right.
people are interested, they're going to play faster. Yeah.
And they don't inject cash and create a loan banking system. I've never seen that. That's pretty nuts.
What? Jews, render user.
I love it. So in general, how have people reacted to Lizzie McGee's story? How's it resonating with people?
The response has been overwhelming. And I mean, you make something, whether it's a book or a movie or whatever, you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. And I remember the night before the official publication date, just telling myself, like, gotta let it go. Like, it's out. It's out there in the world. Like, I can't make any more edits to it. I can't, and somebody's going to pick up the book, and I'm not going to be able to stand there and be like, so on page 102, I have these second thoughts. It's just you have to let it go, and it's very, very hard to do that. But the fact that her story has gotten so much traction has been really surprising because you don't know I mean, it's like there's a lot in there, and so it's been very heartening. People in tech have responded to it a lot. Feminists,
really,
game designers. I know I talked about. It's been fascinating to see, but she's definitely being talked about more now than probably in a long time.
Yeah,
which is exciting and cool.
I remember when it came out. I don't know if you read Cracked.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, you were in Cracked.
Sweet.
Yeah,
yes.
I love Cracked for the same. They often love unearthing those kinds of things, and that's where you'll get your like little short blurb about somebody with for you to dig in and find more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But also one of the things that was humbling in this research project is, so I started this in 2009, right? So we're deep into the Google era. Fine, great, and the internet did provide some really amazing tools as a researcher. But there was so much stuff out there that was just wrong. And seeing how myths spread online and how you'd go and you'd look back and see who they were referencing, who they were citing, and seeing that even now, Hasbro has announced this big, I believe, 80th anniversary. It's not the 80th anniversary because it's just not. Read the book, find out all about it. But even seeing that being spread among major news outlets, and I as a news gatherer, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like really... You can see exactly who fact checks and who doesn't. You have this kind of clean line. So the amount of information and misinformation with this story in particular was a really interesting case study for me.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you talking about digging into like actual files and real paper. Right. Was that stuff that you just couldn't find online?
Absolutely. A lot of it was. And I feel like a lot of people are impressed by that. I'm like, no, I'm a journalist. That's like my job is to like, I'm paid to be cynical and geek out. Like, it's a great gig. Like, don't get me wrong. But, and, I think one of the things I worry about is I feel like my profession, like many, it's kind of through history always been kind of under assault, right? Like, TV is going to ruin it, and then radio, like whatever it may be. And I feel like curiosity is kind of the lifeblood of it. And I worry about, especially younger journalists, like, who are kind of digital natives is the buzz term, right? Not being curious. And I think that Google, for me, it's fueled curiosity. Like, God, we've all had those deep Google holes where you're like, you did it in basketball, and then you're like, it's midnight. But I also worry about it killing curiosity outside of your screen and like going outside and, God forbid, talking to somebody in face to face, or going to your local park. Or there were so many moments of irony where I was like, there's something wrong on Google, but the letters that prove it wrong are at the New York Historical Society, so that way right up. So like, I had a lot of moments like that where I was like, there's actually a lot of stuff out there, believe it or not, that's not on your lap, like not accessible via Wi-Fi. And that's the stuff I get excited about as a researcher. So I feel like, there always is going to be a place for that. I don't know what it is. I don't know who pays for it. I don't know who reads it. But like, a lot of this process was really rewarding because you always worry about getting scooped, even if it's a book.
Right.
And it became clear at a certain point that I was like, I'm really deep in these weeds that like nobody else is in.
They're going to have to follow you.
I'm in a swamp with the gators and like,
So how would you recommend that somebody kind of start moving away from Google and figure out that they could go to the public library or the Historical Society and start digging deeper into things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't even know if it's about moving away from Google. I think it's seeing Google as a start rather than a finish.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, fantastic. And often you find stuff that's great. But then thinking about like, when I at least go down a Google hole, there's books. And then you think about, well, what made up those books? What were the letters? What were the documents? What were, in the case of my book, the depositions, the this, the that? Like, where did this stuff come from? And kind of reverse engineering and going as far back as you can. Like, where did this come from? Is kind of a good question to be asking yourself, whether it's online or in person.
Yeah.
And you can get really frustrated because you can hit walls where you can't find anything, or you're looking for something very specific. And I can't tell you how many times, especially when you're dealing with history, a lot of these people are long since dead.
Right.
And as a journalist, you can pick up the phone and either, if somebody doesn't want to talk to people around them, or, and it's so frustrating when you're like, why can't I just ask Lizzie what she thought on this day in 1930? And you don't get to do that.
You could ask a Ouija board, but that's a board game too.
Right. So
it didn't exist when she was alive.
Yeah, I think it's just getting really deep into things and thinking about where did they actually come from.
Not stopping at like the first Google page that you see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what else isn't out there? I mean, I love interviewing people. I feel like people are so generous with their time and telling their stories, and it's always this very fascinating, humbling process. And those conversations, that's real life. That's something you can't get otherwise. So when somebody's telling you something in a room, in an interview, they often haven't said it before ever, or haven't said it to somebody else. Or and I think it's why, as a journalist, I've kind of been averse to writing about famous people, because they're tired of being interviewed.
Right.
And I think it's harder to pull, and you can do it, but like extracting real things from people, whereas real people who aren't written about every day are so much more satisfying to talk to often. And real people sound so patronizing, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally. Well, just there's a level of candidness that comes from not being scrutinized constantly and not giving the same speech every time.
Right.
And this book tour was the first time where I found myself on the other side of interviews so much more. And I've always believed it's more fun to ask questions than answer them, but it actually feels more conversational. So, and I know you guys, so it's not weird, but like I now see why people go crazy. Like why, if you're on a press junket or something, you do like get a little loopy because you just kind of repeat yourself all the time, and you're in different cities.
How do you
like,
even say it differently?
There's different people, and like some people care about your hair, and some people care about your voice. So like, so it does like it's a weird thing that happens to your brain, which I think I empathize with now. But I have no desire to do for the remaining months of the year. I mean, it's fun, but like. Yeah, there's only so many sound bites you can offer.
Right. No, and how many times you're repeating yourself, and how many times can you make it sound genuine every single time?
Right.
Yeah. Woo! Crazy times. I think we got to go to a song.
Yeah, let's go to another Monopoly song.
Yeah, and then I want to hear more about the process of writing this and the book tour and any weirdos coming out of the woodwork. I bet there are.
Yes.
It's gaming.
It's gaming, as we've been explaining.
Board games.
Yeah, well, board game is gaming, everybody and every kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, we are going back to our Monopoly songs, and this next one is by Prince Parker. Check us out in a minute in Brunch and Budget and Bonfire Radio.
Look, fortune and fame, but less fortunate, the most famous for stunting. I do it all, you Christopher Robins like doing nothing. So foolish, you fools just rather sit and abuse a substance. Afraid to say our absence, most like to abuse assumptions. Fuck them, HIV hard coded than a puck on an ice beat. Luck of the dice beat, banking though those bucks are unlikely. My flash of genius still unmatched. God struck me with lightning. You John Vocals with super fly till I plucked all your right wings. Shucking and jiving with no protection, fuck your suggestions. Mopping the floor with these niggas, but I'm nothing to mess with. No equilibrium between us, my nigga, you're less than me. To speak out the best of me, I pray that it rests in peace. I'm on it though, rap ballerina, stay on your toes. I'm J-U-G-K, big pimpin', you bitches more like Garnabo. Kill the competition, don't fear death, you're next, I'm plotting yours. It's my goal, I pass go, monopolize the game, get off of my board. Get off my board, get off my board, get off my board, get off my board. Boardwalk, my board, avenue, my board, railroad, my board. Like I run it, I got it, 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 I got it. Your money in my pocket, got it all, every property you would not believe, that's monopoly. Stay dominating the game, it's dominatrix. I'm whipping my competition with switches, they're in competition, so inefficient. Barely fitting the standard, I'm upgraded deluxe edition. I'm stingy like I'm abstinent, that's for lack of a fuck I give them. I took 2 chances, I'm too advanced. You blew your chance once you advanced to my railroad. My train of thought cost a narrow, now 2 cents times to my rental. Please get the memo, pay me and get chopped in 3 parts like in shit toes. I hear y'all talk, but I'm focused with the eyes of 4 hawks. I'm a pirate, rob you blind and watch you slowly boardwalk. You're softer than tops on a Corvette convertible. I see next like a V-neck, I'm a T-Rex to a herbivore. I'm not what you heard before, new flavor in your ear. I'm acting in the back of a light with Janet Jackson with an navel pierce. Disabled ears can clearly hear me slaughter a verse. My flow is a broken faucet, I just bought waterworks. Get off my board, get off my board, get off my board, get off my board. Boardwalk, my board, avenue, my board, railroad, my board. Like I run it, I got it, 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 I got it. Your money in my pocket, got it all, every property you would not believe. That's my knock, I'm a Parker. Me and my brother dominate the market, the bandwagon gets towed. There's no free parking, I'm Hot as the Marvin Gardens in August. Hair waves, no sweat. Catch 'em in Surfside Beach, Texas. I'm jerking a deep, wetting it birth by sleep. Reference the kingdom of hearts. I roll with a team full of sharks that make you believe in the God. My goal, MTV says you're usually next. She flashed the whole city, what I call community chest. If you claim that you be the best, it'd be smart for you to invest in the best to protect from niggas when we're rep putting two in your chest. I'm the flu at its best. You have no immunity left, so fluidly using these metaphors, you're a fool to object. Sorry to burst the bubble. Unlucky motherfucker went and rolled a triple double. Not in the Grand Slammer, single cell, your state property. I properly threw a hotel on every property. I own it all, motherfucker. That's monopoly. Monopoly.
Get off my board. Get off my board. That was a very different version of Monopoly. This time by Prince Parker. Not a foul-mouthed jerk. The first one was by the foul-mouthed jerk. Everybody has such fun names. The people who make songs
that's so
about.
insulting. I was like, oh no, it's actually.
No. He's the foul-mouthed jerk. Don't get it twisted or mistaken. There was actually one act that I was thinking about putting on. Was the song wasn't called Monopoly, but the artist was called Mono/Poly.
Oh, I like
Monopoly.
Yeah, right.
that.
You
Etymology
see?
in there. I like it.
Etymology
I like it.
and basically a pun. That's just like a nerd.
Yeah,
pun.
totally.
Yeah.
Oh man. Next time you come on the show, we'll have more Monopoly songs.
Well, he was an instrumental cat, so we can just run that as the very distracting bed.
Oh yeah.
for the next one.
I love it. So, what is the craziest thing that you discovered that didn't make it into the book?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a whole... It's in the book, but it's very short. There was a murder-suicide at this firm called Marvin Glass in Chicago. In an original version of the book... Well, the original earlier versions were just like a lot longer. That's just kind of how I roll, as I write long and then try to pare it down.
Right.
But it was important to me... because it was this insane story. This game designer walked into a firm and shot, I forget how many people, and killed, and then killed himself. And he clearly was, disturbed, clearly, had a lot of issues. But this was obviously a long time before workplace shootings.
Yeah.
Right.
School shootings and things were being talked about. But it also was at this firm that it's actually how Ralph, the reason I put it in the book at all is that Ralph found his lawyer who was suing this company, Marvin Glass. And this game designer, one of the rumors that was in the Chicago tabloids was that he had notes in his shoes that were lost. Or I'm getting this confusing, but the idea that a game designer felt paranoid that their ideas were being taken. Again, totally an extreme.
Yeah.
But I got kind of sucked into that. I spent a lot of time researching it because I felt like this is insane. And it spoke to me about how dark the industry had become. That, on the one hand, this is an industry that most people see the TV commercials for games and, it's so warm and fuzzy. And especially something like Parker Brothers, is a family-owned New England firm that's very homespun. And then the idea that there was this, murder-suicide, that. And when I talked to people who were working in the game industry at the time, they were like, oh, I totally remember hearing about Marvin Glass. And and that was at the time of Ralph's lawsuit. So the idea that this was a silly lawsuit, I'm like, no, there was actually some really heavy stuff going on. So again, because of the plot and pacing, we just cut it a lot. But to me, like I said, it was important kind of in terms of my, figuring out where to point the lens, what the mood was like in the business at the time.
Whoa.
Crazy, right?
That is, I would
Totally
have never
crazy.
thought that game designers could go batshit like postal workers. That's
Right. Turns out anyone can go batshit.
Yeah. Woo.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I can kind of see the logic. It seems a little different than the postal worker thing to me. The cats, they have what they have. A lot of people think that they only have what they create.
Right.
And I know a company will ask everything of you. Will tell you all sorts of stuff. We were talking on an earlier episode about how, the asking for a raise stuff is like being in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it is relationship stuff. And Lord knows how easily a lot of innocuous things turn into grating things, turn into degrading things, turn into I hate you, I'm going to chop your head up and put it in the freezer stuff.
Right.
It is a crazy and long road, but it's definitely an actual road with signs.
Right, absolutely.
Oh, man. That's so nuts. Oh, so
Sorry, that was a very grisly answer.
No, that's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
I believe
But
you.
it was really
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
I
totally.
hope there's nothing crazier than that.
Oh my god.
No.
What was so? I just love what you said about how you had to kind of let go of the book once it was done. It's like such the artist process.
Still trying,
right?
but
I know,
yeah,
right?
still
it's
trying.
Like, still right here, but I feel like it's such the artist process of like, okay, I made this piece, and now I just have to see how the audience reacts and be okay with it. You know, and be okay with how they interpret everything and all of that. So what was the whole process like for you in general? You spent so much time on it, and it was like a huge part of your life for the last 5 years, I imagine.
Yeah, and when you spend this long on a book, and most people are very kind. I just want to preface it that way. Like most people are really, when they ask how your book is doing, it's always a very sweet question, and often from people who aren't writers. And I had days where like people were like, "How is your book?" And I just wanted to like throw my laptop in the air and just be like, I lost, I had a nightmare about it last night. I think my first act sucks. Like,
Wow.
but you can't answer it honestly, but it's
Yeah.
so, you're just so in the middle of it. So now that you're on the other side, and I feel like I've been extremely fortunate in terms of the reviews have been so great, and the sales have been so great, and I know people who've written brilliant things that don't do well. That happens. And so at a certain point, like, you can't get caught up in it. So I feel very, very fortunate. And I don't know how this conversation would be if, for some reason I'd sold 2 copies to my dad,
Right.
But I told myself before kind of the tsunami hit that at the end of the day, like, as much as I hate that phrase, like, you're telling a story that you're excited about and that you believe in, and that Ralph, Lizzie, these people, their story is out there, and it wasn't before.
Yeah.
And books have long tails and long lives. And, with newspaper stories online, right away, basically, if you're the most emailed, or if you're on the homepage, or
Right.
And because of comments, pretty quickly what people think of your work. And with books, I mean, think about it. Like, I can think of so many books that changed my life. That just changed my life that I've never written about. I've never wrote to the author. Like, I've never, so you put things out there and you have no idea what, it kicks off for somebody. And sometimes, like, so you have to be detached from it in a way, because that's just the nature of the beast. Like,
Yeah, people
you don't know
holler
every
at you
single
if they
reader.
hate it.
Yeah, and what's great about a book tour is that it's you meet these people, some of them, a handful of them, and they're real people. And like the idea, like I did this event yesterday that you were at, like there were people who were total strangers who just were there, and I was like, this is amazing. So it's very humbling. I feel like a book is such an ask of somebody's time and money, and it's like, it's the fact that people are still engaged with it is like, it's very, very humbling. It's very I don't know, and how do you thank somebody for that? Like, it's just I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, they were as much as part of the process as you were. Like, this is the end of it, right?
No, it's not the end of it. It never feels like the end of it, and I'm okay with that, actually.
For you, this finishing the book isn't the end.
No, not at all, not at all. But that's okay. That's totally cool. I wrote a piece for Powell's. The bookstore has this fantastic blog, and I wrote about coffee shops and how I write in them. And it took me, when they asked me to write about whatever I wanted, I don't know, and I thank all the coffee shops I wrote in the book, because, and I've asked myself, everybody's different. And sometimes I need silence, sometimes I don't. But I feel like working in coffee shops, what that's done for me is it reminds me that these are real people. I think that writing a book, more than, day-to-day journalism, is very solitary.
Yeah.
And you have to be reminded that there's like human beings out there, and that's who you're writing for. Like you're writing for these people that are total strangers. They're going about their day. And I needed that reminder. And I feel like the book tour, it's a different part of the process. So yeah, I'm done writing it, but like, you do speaking and you do this and you do that. And I hosted a Monopoly tournament with kids, and like, so there's all these other things that are a totally different part of it, but still, part of the book's life in this kind of interesting way.
No, that's so cool. That's so cool. So, do you have any good book tour stories? Have people emailed you crazy things?
It's really funny. It turns out if you write a book, like everybody you've ever met in your life contacts you, which is great, which is really amazing. My 3rd grade teacher came to my event in Powell's.
Oh my gosh,
Mr. Bradley. It was pretty great.
So proud.
It was so, when things like that happen, you just feel like so great. It's like so nice and sweet. My family showed up at a few different events. And I mean, I write about sports. I'm pretty used to strange emails. Like, unfortunately, I got my first marriage proposal via email.
Nice.
Via email?
Yeah, from somebody who had seen me on C-SPAN.
Okay.
Which I didn't know that C-SPAN was like the new, network of romance. But
Oh, yeah. Match.com.
There
C-SPAN.
you have
Oh my
it.
gosh,
So-
C-SPAN. Think about it.
Yeah. So I mean,
Shout
but
out
I'm
to your
not.
lighting department.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I have to explain that I haven't watched it actually. I don't like watching myself on video at all. But I'm wearing like a blazer. Like I look very first lady. Like it is not like.
So
all right.
Yeah, so it's like I'm talking about taxes. Like it's just not.
No, I get
know.
it. Somebody's
I can see why
each their own.
if you're watching C-SPAN, you're into that.
And
Yeah,
I'm torn
yeah,
between
yeah.
thinking this person's like totally nuts, but also kind of respect the YOLO. Like,
Word. Yeah, maybe
You
she'll
know?
say yes.
yeah, like the what the hell?
Oh my god, that's amazing.
So yeah, it's been great. The book's been a big hit with conspiracy theorists.
Nice.
So they've shown up and have all sorts of interesting ideas about my next projects.
I
Yeah,
can only imagine.
yeah. So,
Oh my
but it's a
gosh.
different skill set. Like it's kind of more because people are there. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
a human being there, and they're giving you their time. And when they ask you like an insane question, and you have to answer it in front of a bunch of people, like
Yeah.
you want to be respectful, but that's not. I feel more like that's a skill I have as like the daughter of a therapist than I do as a writer. Like I feel like that's something that I have the
Yeah.
advantage of having seen like a parent. Like, but it's not. I can see why authors go crazy
Right.
because
They're authors because they like being alone.
yeah, like give me a cabin in the woods. Like I
Yeah.
hear ya, and this is the opposite of a cabin in the woods. This is like this is more extroverted than I think I've ever had to be.
Wow.
So yeah, but it's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
a lot of humanity though, like a lot of people. But
I love it. I
very
love
fun.
it. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Mary Pilon, author of The Monopolists, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So awesome. Pick it up, Amazon, Powell's, wherever you pick up your books, it's there. Bestseller, Mary Pilon, The Monopolist.
If you like playing games, if you just care about the reality of how things have gone, if you care about the idea of women who make stuff and get stuff taken from them, or just curious about the concept of it, check out the book. We want to thank everybody for listening this week. Be sure to check out all of the lovely and wonderful Bonfire Radio shows. This is part of Empowerment Sundays with Sweet Success Sundays with Tiffany Denise. We have many other wonderful shows. You're on Bonfire Radio, you ought to listen to if you got time. If you don't got time, just listen to them all at once.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Just like Netflix.
So
Yeah, just-
efficient.
That's how you watch Netflix, right? You
Yeah.
you get it for a week, and in a week you just put it all on at once, and then you're good.
3 different laptops.
That's how it takes you 3 different laptops. Anyway, we will check you out next week. Be sure to check out all the rest of our shows. TK in the AM, Carmen Alita. We got new shows coming for you. You know, Uncommon Nassau's got a show going on, and all the good old Bonfire Radios. Anyway, we're going to end off with yet another song called Monopoly. This one is by the Bloody Diamonds. I told you, they all had great names. From their album, They've Got Secrets. Want to thank Mary Pilon again, and talk to y'all soon. Bunch and Budget, Bonfire Radio. Peace.